Okay. Wow.
We are recording.
Okay, we had another, oh, there's, okay. So I'd like to call the joint board meeting of Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority, Scioto Valley Fire and Rescue, and Western Lane Ambulance District to order. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America, to the republic
For which it stands,
under God,
one nation,
indivisible,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There he is. Okay. So Holly, if you could do a roll call, please.
Right. SVFR Board Directors, Director Polisi.
Here.
Director Burns.
Here.
Director Hickson. Director Spade.
Here.
Director Green.
Here.
Western Lane Board of Directors, Director Yesney.
Here.
Director Farnsworth.
Here.
Director Webb.
Here.
Director Murphy.
Here.
And Director Russell. Okay. WLFEA Board of Directors, Director Polisi.
Here.
Director Spade.
Here.
Director Murphy.
Here.
And Director Russell.
Like I said, I did hear from Cindy, and she had an emergency. She had to go up to Washington State. She was going to try and dial in, but she said she might not be able to make it, and she hasn't. And Ned did text us earlier, and he is still working, but he's going to try and get on as soon as possible. So now I'd like to open, Dina, do we have anybody for public comments?
No, we do not.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Okay, hearing none. So we'll go on to our next. We have a presentation. I'm going to turn that over to Chief House. And for those of you that have it on the screen, you'll be able to see the presentation. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Chief. Ali Garib is present with us tonight too, and what I'd like to do is recognize him as receiving the Paramedic of the Year award. This award he obtained because of doing great things over the last year. I just want to highlight four main ones. Great airway management. He had 100% intubation success, 1 cardiac arrest save, which was completely through hospital discharge, 2 stroke patients with neurological interventions and minor deficits per discharge, 2 STEMI patients with precutaneous coronary interventions with limited bad outcomes afterwards, and one of them had a pacemaker implemented afterwards. Through our awards committee, that's where we decided that Ali was the best candidate of the last year, and that's why we like to congratulate Ali for Paramedic of the Year.
Show your certificate.
Well
done.
Somewhere.
Oh, you lost it already?
Yeah.
His kids probably have it.
There we go.
Don't mind
Wish
my,
we were
my children.
in live.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Ali. Well deserved. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the certificate.
Great job, Ali.
Well done.
Okay. Now on number 6, one slight change on the agenda. Of course, we're doing public hearings for both SVFR and Western Lane, and it's the fiscal year 2021 and 2022 budget that we're doing. Sorry, we left that off. So now I'd like to open the SVFR for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. And we'd like to open up for public comments. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Hearing none, we can go to the approval of the resolution. Again, this is for SVFR Board of Directors. You should have the resolution adopting the budget. I need a motion and a second to adopt that resolution.
Chief Schick,
Yes.
is that resolution 2021-2022?
2023-02?
It's 2021-02.
Oh,
On page 3.
okay. So moved.
And I will second that.
So moved by Alan Burns, seconded by Ron Green. Any discussion on the budget? Hearing none, Holly, can you do a roll call vote?
Yes, for SVFR, Director Polisi,
Yes.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Spade,
Yes.
Director Green.
Yes.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I closed the public meeting or the public hearing, but we did. So now I'd like to open the public hearing for Western Lane Ambulance District budget for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and then entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
One more thing on gals and I'll leave it alone.
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget for Western Lane Ambulance District, Resolution 2021-02, adopting budget for fiscal year 21 and 22.
And I'll second. This is Rick.
Okay, motion by Mike Webb, a second by Rick Yesney. Any discussion? Holly, can you do a roll call vote, Western Lane Ambulance District directors?
Director Yesney,
Yes.
Director Farnsworth,
No.
Director Webb,
Yes.
Director Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, and Cindy doesn't get to vote, but she did pass on that she was in favor of the budget. Okay. Consent agenda consisting of the meeting minutes from regular meeting, April 22nd, staff reports and correspondence. Are there any corrections or additions to the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll approve the consent agenda, which consists of the meeting minutes, staff reports, and the correspondence. Monthly financials. Dina.
Okay, financials are looking good as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. I really only have one thing to report. In March, I transferred $195,000 out of capital to the general fund for capital outlay expenditures. And then we found out we were going to wait to see if we could get the grant for the cardiac monitors. I left $25,000 in there to cover the other capital expenses, but I transferred the $170,000 back into capital. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Dina, I have two. Have we made our PSAP payment at this point in April, through that time?
I don't think we've been billed.
I don't think we have received the invoice yet.
Is that like 100,000 plus or something like that?
It's 114 last year.
Okay, so on a comparative basis, we're looking better, but we still have that big expense hanging out there for PSAP. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's see, the other thing was, I'm working from my parents' home on an iPhone and an iPad, and I can hardly, with my glasses, read this stuff, so bear with me. There was a payment to Benton County Public Works on the bills for like $15,008.
They do the automotive repairs for us. That was
So that's a
major.
repair. That's just a major repair.
Yeah.
Okay. And no problems with our ambulances. They're fine. It's just,
One of it was a head gasket replacement for Medic 615. That was the big bill of around 11,000.
okay.
The
Okay.
rest of it was annual.
Okay. So no problems with the vehicles, really.
Now,
Okay.
yeah. Don't
Yeah,
jinx.
thank you.
Yeah.
I had one question on the credit card bill. In order to provide greater clarity when we're purchasing something from Amazon, it'd be helpful if maybe staff could just write in what the purchase item was, because Amazon as a vendor isn't descriptive enough to tell us what was purchased. It appears that the two purchases on the credit card were probably the Leatherman tools that Matt picked up for the staff, which is fine, but I'm not sure because it just says Amazon $1,600 and $800.
Well, if you go to the next report, that is the MasterCard expense transaction list. And it has memos and descriptions for each transaction.
Okay, very good. That's where I picked up the answer.
Any other questions or comments on the financials? Okay, we'd like to move on to old business. We have, remember the last couple of months, we've been talking about moving funds to the local government investment pool. And at our last board meeting, I think both districts agreed to do that. So we have the resolutions for tonight. So I've got SVFR first. So I need a motion to approve resolution 2021-03 from Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue Directors.
So moved, chief.
So Director
So
Byrne,
seconded by Spade.
any discussion?
It's good business.
So Holly, can you do a roll call vote, please?
SVFR, Director Polisi,
Yes.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Hickson, Director Spade,
Yes.
Director Green.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Move on to Western Lane Ambulance District. Same question.
I'll make the motion that we approve resolution 2021-03, a resolution to move funds into the local government investment pool as written.
Murphy, second.
Holly, can you do any discussion? Holly, can you do a roll call vote?
Director Yesney,
Yes.
Director Farnsworth,
Yes.
Director Webb,
Yes.
Director Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the, to discuss the strategic business plan. So there was, we had proposed to do a strategic plan working with Lane Council of Government, LCOG. They are ready to start doing that, but then the question was raised, should it be one plan with objectives that could be specific to each agency, or should there be separate plans? We included the last update, which is a joint update, but we'll open it up for discussion, and this can be from both districts.
Well, I noticed that the way the plan is written, there are separate sections for Western Lane Ambulance District initiatives and SVFR initiatives. I don't have any problem with that.
And that would be our intent. There have to be some objectives that would be specific to the
Right.
agency. Yeah.
But I didn't want to see a WLFEA strategic plan. I want to see initiatives for each part of our operations, each district.
Yeah, I would imagine it would look really similar to the update or the 2017-18 update,
Right.
where you have a lot of joint objectives and then you have a lot of specific objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree with Larry. I think if we do have to unwind this establishment, ours, Western Lane and Siuslaw Valley can be separated out of that strategic plan and their own made.
Yes.
Any further comments, discussion? Okay, we'll proceed as planned then. The next budget item is the polling questions. So the feasibility committee has met, went over all the comments received from directors about the polling questions, met with the polling question expert. And sorry, you're seeing so many versions, but we kept receiving some great comments, and and feedback from directors. So the version that Adina sent out this morning is the 8th version, and that's the version that we want the directors to consider. And just some modification of the language. Director Burns, do you have a question?
Yeah, I haven't seen the 8th draft. I have the 7th draft.
It would have been emailed this morning.
Nope.
So it includes, you saw the changes I had made.
I saw the 7th one, and I've been here since 6 this morning.
Yeah, and I did some minor typo changes to make it the 8th.
I've not seen the 8th either.
I emailed that at 10:12 a.m.
Okay, the last one I got was the 7th.
I received
Oh, I'm
it.
sorry. It says, I'm sorry, it says 7th draft on it. The actual file name should say version 8. I'm sorry, that's my fault.
Shame on you.
Okay.
It's the version that also included the Zoom meeting invite.
Okay, that's the 7th one I got.
It's okay. It does. You're all correct. It does say 7th draft, except in the title. So good. We're all on the same page. So that's the one we want to discuss.
Thank you.
And I don't know if any of the committee members want to say anything about the meeting and the review of the comments, or.
Well, I have just a little bit to say on it. When the feasibility committee was charged to do this, we were looking at whether a merger was feasible. So the questions that you see within this are kind of based upon that. That's what we were looking at. We asked first is it functionally possible? The answer was yes. Is it financially possible? The answer was yes. Could the tax districts work with blended rates depending upon locations? The answer was yes. And then do we have public participation in the decision, and do we have public support? That answer is unknown. So the whole purpose of the survey, or a primary purpose of the survey, is to hopefully get to that answer so that it can drive our strategic planning going forward. Is the public interested in us moving together, or are they interested in us staying apart? And that's the intention behind this, the last questions in this district. So I wanted to make sure that people knew why we were trying to ask the merger question, because it's really something critical to driving future planning for how the district shapes from this point forward. I think it's really important that the public have a say in that. And this is the first step to that.
Other comments?
Well, yeah, I'd like to mention that if you look at the minutes of our last meeting, there were several directors that emphasized the importance of public education before we polled these questions. Because it's one thing to say, are you in favor of a merger with, you know, the glossy, biased answers that were put into these questions, than it is to have a public discussion with both pro and con statements, much like we have in a voter's pamphlet. You know, people do not know what the issues are in our discussions. And it's a stretch to say that these questions are not biased. I noticed that in my email, I submitted a number of questions, and the feasibility committee didn't adopt a single one of my suggestions. That in itself shows bias towards a predetermined outcome. And when you throw words around like cost, no cost increases, there's no possible way there won't be cost increases as paramedics move into a firefighter PERS program. So I'm really quite disappointed in the document. I noticed that LCOG provided the questioning and the polling for the port, and I provided an example of their polling document. And all they're trying to do is ask people about what can we do better, not a question about mergers. But it's an open-ended survey by the same people, LCOG, and our survey should be the same way. Now, if we're going to ask the public about merger questions, there should be a robust debate in our community forums There should be, as COVID may come to an end, opportunities for both online and in-person discussions, to have this be a vigorous discussion of the merits, the pros and cons of this question before the boards. It would be premature for us to think that the 10 of us as elected board members have the entire frequency of what the community wants with this kind of a survey. There's no possible way we'll get answers that are critical or subjective or with any kind of analysis unless taxpayers have the opportunity to know what's down the road for them. I think I was pretty clear in my email. I'm disappointed in the product that's presented to us this evening.
Director Polisi, you got your hand up.
Yes, I do. I hope everyone can hear me. I do agree with Director Farnsworth to a certain extent that, yeah, I mean, as we roll out of COVID, we got to get more, participation from the community attending open meetings. However, I want to get back to the point of, I don't think the public would truly understand the difference between a consolidation and a merger. And I think that that really needs to be clarified to the public, the taxpayer, as to how their funds are distributed in a consolidation versus a full merger. And I would like some feedback on that. Is everybody familiar with a consolidation and a merger? Do they know the difference?
Thank you, Director Polisi. Other director comments?
Director Spade, I'd like to comment on, I sent you, Chief, a statement that said that I think that the way we're looking at this as far as polling by the phone is antique way of doing that. And I think that some of the things that Larry mentioned as far as have a online survey by the chamber or social media type of effort to get feedback from the community is a better way to go. I know today, if I get a phone call unknown, I usually don't answer it, let it go to voicemail. And I think we're going to get a lot more of that today than you would in the past when people would answer the phone call. So I think that in addition to the questions, we need to look at the format for the way we're trying to get the response from the community and get the feel of what the community wants.
I did pass your comments on, Director Spade, and you're right. I think I don't think it's an either or. We've been having a lot of debate recently about should it be an online survey as well. I think we're going off the expertise from the Public Affairs Council, who feels that phone call polling does work. Yeah, I think I know I don't answer my landline unless I know who's calling, but we have talked about that a lot.
That's $14,000 too that they're asking for that, which is, money could be well spent somewhere in a social media or just a survey that we have locally here amongst the people in another method which we've come up with.
But what we've heard is that, well, they will definitely get 300 responses. They won't stop until they get 300 responses. And from what I've heard, and I think this came from the port as well, their online survey has not been going very well. They haven't had a lot of people fill that out. So
really,
I mean, there's plus and minuses for both methods.
Well, sure. I didn't know if there was another way to do it. I just saw some ideas and thought that it might be some other way to get the data back from the community other than just by phone calls.
And we will have some data coming back during the focus groups when we do a strategic plan. But we're thinking we'd be able to get 300 responses. Director Murphy, you had your hand up.
I'm old and forgetful. Did we have discussion? Are we going to just do this survey out of the blue? Or are we going to have town hall meetings and educate people before? What is our actual process planning?
For the polling?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we would do a couple press releases saying that we're going to do a phone poll and to help or get feedback from our citizens on the services provided, as well as, possible merger question. But that would be it for the phone poll. But then we'd use that data that would be incorporated into the strategic planning process. Director Green.
I think there's been the comment too that, if an eventual full merger was the objective, that's something that's probably going to transpire in 3 to 4 years, correct?
Correct.
I appreciate Director Farnsworth's comments, and certainly we want these questions to be non-biased and to kind of formulate a totally non-biased opinion. But I just still see this as kind of a bit of a fact finding at the point that there is a merger, and especially if there was a consolidation or the creation of a super taxing district or something like that, that's going to require obviously taxpayer vote. And there'll be plenty of time, I think, for us to properly educate what is going to happen, what the risks are, what the costs are, and then certainly their vote will stand. I'm just seeing this right now as just an opportunity for us to gather more data, especially since we're operating on a consolidated basis right now, at least administratively. And I support the questions that were presented.
Thank you, Director Green. Director Webb, you got your hand up.
Just one thing to add on it. We was discussed that this was kind of a way to take the temperature of the public right now. This is something that we honestly haven't done. The boards have gotten to this place before. We've been here, I would say 2008, 2010, when we were discussing the same thing. And we weren't able to get over the hump, but we never asked the public what their opinion was. The boards relied on their own opinion, but we actually did a disservice to the public by not involving them. I would like to at least gauge their temperature and see, are they interested or not? And should we take this any further or not? And if they give us good feedback and they say they want us to do this, then that leads our planning going forward and our timeline, and then we begin the education plan. If there's no interest from the public in doing this, we can readdress where we are in our strategic plan and act accordingly. But this is probably one of the best ways right now that we can get the temperature before we go forward with our plan, which will set up the next few years. I don't know why we would want to ignore the public at this point in time. That's my reason for supporting this. And the methodology for the questions is intentional. And there's some open-ended questions that give a chance for the people to respond and maybe give us a little bit more feedback than what we're hoping for. Which could be very good. So I like the survey as it's written and the questions as written. That's it.
And welcome to Director Hickson for joining us. Now we're talking about the polling questions.
Yeah.
Any other comments from directors?
Yes.
Director Burns.
I agree with Ron and Mike and everybody as far as how important it is to get the public input. What I personally would like to see is within the next 2-3 months, if we can, is have some sort of a town hall when the pandemic opens up where people can meet, give the public a presentation of what we're talking about, then go out to the questions to the phone poll, and then take them back to the public months after that. That way we get 2 bites at the apple to one, hear what the public has to say first, maybe change a question or 2, and then take those results back to the public.
But if we do that, we waste the strategic planning we're coming up to. So what we're trying to do in the next strategic planning is set forth the direction for the future. If we wait until we've educated the public out of the pandemic, we might as well delay strategic planning.
But if we come back with the public says absolutely no way, then we've wasted it also.
Not necessarily. No, then we turn and go in a different direction. Sure. If the public says no way, our strategic planning focuses on what they tell us. At least that's the way I read it.
I understand, Mike, and I just, the one thing I'm just very cautious is what Director Spade says. If I get a phone call here and I don't recognize it, the chances of me answering is not too high.
They will leave a voicemail as well, identify them as a professional polling service calling on behalf and request a phone call back. And then ask for your credit card
Oh,
number
I
at the same
understand.
time.
Yeah.
But,
I understand. I got one today that wanted to go to Marriott and Puerto Vallarta, and I said, happy to go if you can get me off the TSA list, no fly list. So
No, we're not
I think too that there's a feeling that the predetermined outcome, even that we're discussing right now, is absolute merger. I don't think we know that. I think there's still the idea that some sort of halfway in between consolidation beyond just an administrative consolidation that could meet both the identity of the two districts, but also the taxpayer satisfaction. I think that's still what this is all about. This is, I think, the question support kind of deriving as to what is that we're trying to achieve. And ultimately, as Mike said, the public will tell us. So
it's a
Director-
crystal ball.
Yeah, Director Farnsworth.
Well, I was going to mention perhaps Director Green, did you see the consolidation proposal from the last meeting? You're muted.
You're muted.
dang it. I've been given the overview as to its content, but I've not read it. No.
Okay, well, the concern was that the proposal showed a combined consolidation of the budgets of both districts. And in my opinion and other people's opinions, once you start consolidating the budget dollars, it's pretty hard to track whether or not there's cross subsidization from one district to another. And these are districts with different geographical boundaries. And the question about whether or not that's appropriate, sure, it could be done, but is it appropriate without taxpayer approval? Because there's certainly no possibility that you're going to be able to track how that money is spent within district boundaries once it's consolidated. And so the concern is that this would be a fait accompli, that once you have this consolidation of funds, whether they come from a health district or a levy or the fire district or patient revenue, once you've gone that far, unwinding this consolidation, which is really a merger, as the chief indicated, came down to changing the titles on the trucks. So the concern is that if we're going to have that kind of a monumental discussion or decision by these elected boards, that's something that should come before taxpayers, before that consolidation takes place. I'm also reminded of two other things. We went to an SDAO conference and we talked with the PERS executive director, and he said it would be complete lunacy for these two districts to merge with their unfunded actuarial liabilities. Why in the world would you ever want to do that? He asked me. And second is that when you look at this group of 10 directors that currently serve, we were unanimous in our conclusion that the cost problems at the ambulance district had to be addressed before we'd ever look at a merger. Now, if we've forgotten that, shame on us, because we still have that issue in front of us. We did not accomplish the changes in the collective bargaining agreement we all set out to make. So I think these questions and this survey, absent the vigorous public outreach, town halls, and discussion that Director Burns has suggested, is also improper. There's no way we're going to be able to take the pulse and the heartbeat of the community and what they want as service without having that kind of exposure. And sure, maybe it'll slow down the strategic planning process, but it better be slowed down rather than be done wrong. Let's do it right. And if the outcome is a merger, the outcome is a merger. But let's make sure the community, every single person who wants to know more about what's going on here, has a chance to have a voice in that and share that with their elected directors. Because to act prematurely is just wrong. Thank you.
Director Yasny, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have gone back and forth on these questions a little bit too, but I think, and I lowered my hand earlier because Director Webb said exactly what I was going to say. I think this survey can be used as a starting point to address the elephant in the room about where we go in the future as far as merging these districts, only a starting point. And as a starting point, you take a temperature of where the voters are right now and get their feedback. It doesn't mean it's a it's a complete deal once something happens. I think it's just going to be a start to lead into to strategic planning and a long-term plan. I do agree. We were also, I guess what I'd like to say to Director Farnsworth is, I think our financial picture is so much different at Western Lane than it was when we all agreed we were going off a precipice. We are, in our second year of having somewhere north of $400,000 to $500,000 of revenue above our expenditures on a budgetary basis. Fees have changed. PERS has also come out better than we thought at that time. So things changed and we have to change with them. And thankfully things have changed. So I don't want to make it sound like we are continuing to have a huge financial problem that's equal to what we talked about a year and a half ago. I just don't think that's true. And I don't think that's where we're at. So I think you need to start somewhere. And I think it would be good to start sooner than later. And that's all this survey does. It's not the end all. It's not an answer. It's just to see where would voters even entertain going forward with the discussion. And then there has to be due process after the results of this survey come out. So I'm in favor of going ahead. I don't like all the questions either, but I think you got to start somewhere. I think we can kick process around and kick this down the road for years and years if we want to, or let's get started and look at this just as a start of a process. This isn't the end all to go out and decide we're going to merge or even consolidate. It starts the discussion. So I'm in favor of going ahead with the way it is.
Director Hickson.
I just wanted to throw this out there that I just want to make sure that we're not trying to overcomplicate the questions that we're asking. I mean, essentially what we're asking the community, and in my opinion, the most important things is, are you getting the service that you want? If you aren't, what would those things be? What could we do better? And when you get those kinds of questions answered, then you can decide whether or not, well, do we achieve those things will a merger help us achieve that in terms of our service? Because to me, it continually comes back down to the service. Yes, the money is important. Yes, we need to have a budget. Yes, we need to make sure that we're following the budget the best that we can. But ultimately, it comes down to the service that people want and what they expect. And if a merger is going to help us do that, great. But if it's not, then we don't. I feel like we're trying to rush ahead and decide on whether or not one is better than the other without really understanding what the community wants specifically from us. And we should base our decisions based on what they want, not what we think they want.
Director Murphy.
Yeah, I think the survey is a starting point, and that's going to let the public tell us they in favor of moving forward as a consolidation. And Ron had mentioned a possible merger 2 to 3 years. A full-blown merger, in my mind, would be a lot further out than that, because if the board of directors, whoever they are at that time, decide they want to merge, they put it out to the voters. Well, they got to vote to close Western Lane Ambulance. They got to vote to close Sayusla Valley Fire. They got to vote to approve WLFEA as the governing body of those two. Well, you got to have plans. If they vote to leave Western Lane Ambulance open, they vote to close Sayusla Valley Fire.
It's all or none, John. It's all or none. It wouldn't
your problems are just starting if we decide to merge, and I believe a merger is quite a ways down the road, possibly a consolidation in the future, but I wouldn't even worry about a merger for the next 5 years at least. But
I think that 5 years is a good target date, because then the local option levy would be coming up again. So Director Burns, you had your hand up.
Everybody has there's no crystal ball, but like Director Yesney from the ambulance district said, we have to start someplace, and these questions are fine, Chief Schick. I made a few comments, but it's a starting point, and I'm in favor of it.
Other directors, any comments? Director Farnsworth.
I'd like to propose that 2 questions be added. That would be the question, are you aware that most communities in Oregon are serviced by excellent ambulance services with no tax subsidy at all? Yes or no? And then the next question would be, Western Lane Ambulance District receives 2 property tax subsidies each year, a permanent levy and an option levy. Together, these add up to approximately $1.6 million per year. When private businesses can offer these same services with no taxpayer money, do you think we should change to private ambulance services? If we're just asking questions with one side of the equation, we're not actually asking people or educating them. These 2 questions will go a long ways to bringing equity in these questions.
I think that's a little deceptive, and when you're calling it excellent service, I think a lot of people, the data I've seen is that privates typically don't have the same level of service we're providing here. I mean, that's just the data. So I don't know if that's going to be a realistic or a good question to ask.
I think bias is in your answer, Chief.
No, it's the data.
I think
Just look at the data from Pacific West response times in Lincoln County, our nearest neighbors.
and as near as
That's worse than what we have here.
as near as I know, you've never actually checked with them about their response times. Is that correct?
I have checked with Lincoln County,
Right.
who
So,
holds the contract.
so I asked 2 questions be put on the survey. 2 questions. To offset the bias in the other questions, Chief, where you keep advertising better service, lower cost, faster response times. Let's talk about equity here in these questions. Just because you don't believe in the question doesn't mean it shouldn't be asked.
No, I think when the question, I believe, is deceptive, I don't think it should be asked.
Well, I think it's deceptive to tell taxpayers that they're going to have lower costs when you know the costs will go up with the PERS program.
No, I think what the question says is that the tax rate will not increase.
Now, you also said lower costs. I'm just asking for equity in these questions. You guys asked for my input at the last meeting. I sent my input in. You didn't adopt a single question that I posed.
They reviewed all your comments.
Okay.
Well, maybe the question would be better worded if we included something more along the lines of how much would you be willing to pay for the service that you are receiving, or something that's a little more broad, a little broader than specifically pointing to a different service. And just saying, how much would you be willing to pay for the service you have? Or do you feel that the service you're receiving based on what you're paying is a value for what you're paying?
And so in that context, Director Hickson, you could simply take out the word excellent, Chief, and that's still an adequate question.
That is one of the questions.
Okay, are you aware that most communities in Oregon are serviced by ambulance services with no tax subsidy at all? Yes or no? And then the second question I had was Western Lane Ambulance District receives 2 property tax subsidies each year, a permanent levy and an option levy. Together, these add up to approximately $1.6 million per year. When private businesses can offer these same services with no taxpayer money, do you think we should change to private ambulance services? Yes or no? There's nothing wrong with that question.
I disagree that you'll get the same service.
It doesn't say anything about service.
Well, doesn't the question say you will receiving the same? Can you read it again?
There's 2 questions. The first
Second
question I'm proposing is the one that says, are you aware that most communities in Oregon are serviced by, and I use the word excellent ambulance services with no tax subsidy at all, yes or no? And I'm proposing we strike the word excellent. So it would simply read, are you aware that most communities in Oregon are serviced by ambulance services with no tax subsidy at all, yes or no? And the second question would be educational. Western Lane Ambulance District receives 2 property tax subsidies each year, a permanent levy and an option levy. Together, these add up to approximately $1.6 million per year. When private businesses can offer these same ambulance services with no taxpayer money, do you think we should change to private ambulance services? Yes or no?
I guess I'm interpreting when you say the same level of service, same
Didn't
service.
say same level of service.
I'm saying that you're implying that response times would be the same, certification levels of their employees would be the same, and I don't see that as being truthful.
Can I step in here one thing, Chief?
Sure.
The number one thing that I have a problem a little bit with is always throwing around the word excellent. You may think something's excellent, and we'll say Mr. Palisi doesn't, or Ned didn't have a good experience and they didn't find an excellent. Excellent to me is such a personal situation that what I think is excellent, somebody may think it's trashed, or if they had a bad experience.
Thank you, Alan. Director Palisi, you wanted to speak.
Yes. Can everybody hear me? I keep cutting in and out. I do understand what all my fellow directors are saying, and I agree. I mean, what is excellent? To one is one, to the other is the other. Just like, Director Burns said, hey, you may have had a great experience, but somebody may not have. But I do have a question about the privatization factor. That is not a taxpayer expense. Who does the private vendor charge when the person who needed assistance can't pay? Does that fall upon us, the taxpayers? I mean, these are some questions that, I don't know how many the call volume of who's paying what, who has insurance, but my experience with private EMS is that they go after a deep pocket. If they can't get their money, because they're a business for profit, if they can't get it from who they provided services to, they bill the county, and then the county bills back. So just because somebody says, oh, it's private, it's not going to cost the taxpayers money, someone's going to flip that bill, and I'd sure like to know. And
Not always, but that's.
Well, hang on. Eugene Springfield Fire runs an EMS ambulance district with fire. And who pays for that? The taxpayer. Seems to be working for them pretty darn well.
Yeah.
So, I would really be cautious about, it's not going to cost the taxpayer, because somewhere along the line it will. And I would like to know who.
Most of the time it's the consumer.
And if the consumer can't pay, then who?
Then the next consumer who's paying.
And who is that? The county that contracted that EMS service? Somebody's going to pay.
Well, ambulance agencies don't collect 100% of what they bill. I think there is some that, goes to collections. I don't know that the county or parent organization would be on the hook, but I don't know that for a fact, Jim.
Well,
I think what the case is, I think these other ambulance services do just what we do. They get some calls where they do lift assist and don't get paid. They get 911 calls where there's no transport, no service given. They don't get paid. The primary difference between a private and our ambulance service is that they get taxpayer money here. And that's because when the sisters bought the hospital, they weren't eligible for the health district, so they spun it off with the ambulance. And so we have the only health district sponsored ambulance district in the state. And I think that important information for taxpayers is that there are different models of service out there. Whether we debate the quality thereof, I think is a secondary question in one context and a primary question in another context. But what I was trying to say is, in order to bring equity to these questions, I think these two questions should be asked.
Six of this, half dozen this with me. Sir, I just don't want to have the word excellent in any question.
I took it out.
Yeah.
Director Farnsworth, how about wording some of those in the same context as the other questions that say, if you knew, kind of in that context? Because what we're saying really with these questions is, it doesn't mean it is, or it's a fact, but that'll come through the debate and the discussion with the public.
I'd be
Okay,
okay with
Rick.
that completely. That's a great idea. If you want to.
I'd go with that, Rick.
Yeah, if you want to change the lead into, if you knew that, I'd be okay with that.
So could you state that entire question, Rick?
Me?
Or Director Farn, just, yeah, so we can make sure we have.
You'd have to get the wording to be consistent with the rest of these questions in the merger area, I think.
I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think we need to get some definite, I think what Chief is probably asking for is some definite wording so we can vote and move on with.
So, let's see. The first one is, are you aware that most communities in Oregon are serviced by ambulance services with no tax subsidy at all? How do you want to change that to if you knew?
Yeah, I think that's a statement of, that's trying to make a statement of fact that I'm not sure it's a fact. I don't know that. So, so what if you made it broader with an, if you knew that services could be provided by a private ambulance service without a tax subsidy, would you still favor a merger? You know, something like that.
Okay. And then the second question is, Western Lane Ambulance District receives 2 property tax subsidies each year, a permanent levy and an option levy. Together, these add up to approximately $1.6 million per year. That's all fact up to that point. Together, these, when private businesses can offer these ambulance services with no taxpayer money, do you think we should change to private ambulance services, or would you believe we should?
You don't think that's a leading question, Larry?
Well, I think there's all kinds.
Out loud, that's kind of obvious there.
There's a lot of.
I think you're just muddying the water with the whole thing, and get off the privates on this. For a public agency at this time, we should stick with the questions as they are, because they're going to drive how we go in the future. If the public doesn't support us, then the options of considering private ambulance would be what we are. But right now, we're kind of a public agency. We have PERS obligation whether we go private or not. So I don't know. Your description is incorrect, and your assessment on the cost of this is incorrect. I mean, you're missing critical care.
Yep.
So critical care transport, who pays for that when the privates don't have the capacity to do that? We're just getting all into the weeds. We don't need to. We just want to judge the temperature of the people here and see whether they're interested. See first, are we doing something the way they want us to do it? And are they interested in us combining services or not? It's just, I mean, we're spending way too much time on something that's so simple.
Well,
and for nothing, for no gain.
From the beginning of the process, this was advertised as not being a biased committee or a biased process. So what I've done is shed light on the fact that it is a biased process. If you don't want to use the questions I suggested, I guess that will be for the taxpayers to their detriment, because you won't be asking all the questions that should be asked. If you want to wordsmith them so that they're a little more open-ended, I'm fine with that. But I think they should be asked.
They don't give us anything that we're looking for in the strategic plan. We're trying to plan for a public district, and you're planning.
I think our board of directors has an obligation, as you yourself said, Director Webb. You said if we couldn't get costs under control, we could outsource it to a private business.
We have that option legally.
We do, and you mentioned
that. We're
that
not there right now, and costs are under control.
I understand, but you mentioned
well under control, and your description and your chicken little doom and gloom on this one is incorrect.
Okay.
We need to ask the questions at the district as it is now, but we're also combining Siuslaw Valley in this. They're part of the question with it. So are we providing emergency medical and fire services? It's when you get into just dwelling upon ambulance and cost of ambulance and trying to describe privates, you're doing this service because you're not accurately describing the product that we're getting.
See, I believe that
We're
our
giving
district-
something a whole lot better than what the typical privates do, both in our response time and the quality of care. You got to look at the experience level we have, and we pay for that experience level. But these guys are good, and we gain some efficiencies from it, some serious efficiencies. And I doubt that another district or a private could handle 1,000 square miles as we do under the budget that they would be constrained to with only private pay. So I
yet we've
really
never-
don't think we need to go that direction right now. I
And
think
yet-
we need to get the answers to these questions and then we can move forward. Because you've been filibustering, I can filibuster a little bit too. I mean, this whole conversation's been dwelling upon how you want these questions answered. And you're consuming the whole time and wasting our time. We just need to get these answers so we can plan going forward. That's I'm done. I'm not going to talk anymore on it. I'm
Okay.
ready to make a motion to approve the questions as submitted.
I have one more thing I'd like to say. I think as Western Lane Ambulance Board of Directors, we are not beholden to running this the way it is running now. We have an obligation as directors to look at what is good for taxpayers. That's who elected us. So if it's better for taxpayers that we use a private ambulance service for these, then we should at least examine that question. We're being negligent if we don't look at the alternative models of service that are available.
Okay, Director Murphy, I sent you a text message. Can you reply to that for me, please? Director Polisi, did you lowered your hand?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did.
So Chief,
Okay.
point of order here, I think, didn't Director Webb make a motion and there was no second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you make a motion, Mike?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so, and that motion again was as questions as,
To approve the questions as format, to approve them as submitted.
okay, is there a second?
I have a question, Mike.
That'll be under,
motion?
that'll be during the discussion part, Director
Okay.
Byrne. We need a second first from Western Lane Ambulance District.
I will
Director-
make the second so we can move forward here.
Okay, discussion.
I'd like to
Director-
see, I'd like to see two questions added to the survey, the two questions that I suggested, and I'd be happy to work with Director Yesney if he can propose some better writing of them.
So that would be an amendment to the motion. I think it has to be accepted by Director Webb.
Nope.
Director Burns, did you want to comment or?
That's what I was bringing up.
Okay. Any further discussion? So Holly, can you do a roll call vote of Western Lane Ambulance District Directors?
Director Yesney,
Yes.
Director Farnsworth,
No,
Director Webb,
Yes.
Director Murphy.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll, same question for Scioto Valley Fire and Rescue.
I'd make a motion that we accept the questions as presented to the Scioto Valley Fire and Rescue Board.
Is there a second?
Yes,
Second.
please.
Nope, sorry, Jim.
That's all right, Alan.
Green made the motion and Polisi seconded. Is there discussion? Okay, Holly, can you do a roll call vote of Scioto Valley Fire and Rescue?
Director Polisi,
Yes,
Director Burns,
Yes,
Director Hickson,
Ned,
On mute.
You're muted, Ed. I'm sorry.
He's very quiet.
Muted.
Director Hickson,
Yes.
Director Spade,
Yes.
and Director Green.
Yes.
Okay. Just let me check. So Ali, we had an employee that wanted to speak. I know I've been waiting to get you in. Was that a mistake, Ali, or did you really want to say something?
It was a mistake. You're all right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll go on to new business now. A request was made at the last board meeting to discuss staffing models for Western Lane Ambulance District. So I put together an agenda bill. I was a little uncomfortable doing that. I think we're getting into operations, but I'm more than willing to get receive feedback if needed. But the question was, what's the proper mixture of paramedics and EMTs for Western Lane Ambulance District for the service levels we want to provide? So, are there any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I had a few questions, Chief.
Sure.
So you've talked about your different models there, and I was thinking back to when we were helping you prepare a budget, and you had proposed that we have a paramedic, critical care paramedic, and an EMT in every ambulance.
I proposed that was as a series of proposals. If we had to cut our budget, that was one potential area that we could cut our budget.
Okay, and then you also talked about what the model would look like in a full merger with the fire department, that it would be like a critical care paramedic in back and a firefighter driver in the front.
That would depend on the call, but I would think for a transfer to Eugene, we would use a model like, or we could use a model like that. I think it would depend on the exact call, what you had to do and what you could do.
Okay, so my question is, how does these staffing models, how does that work with or square with or change what you told us before?
You mean using a firefighter or?
Yes, right.
Well, it would, we haven't consolidated, so
I
I would be very reluctant unless it was an emergency to use a firefighter on the ambulance. The ambulance could certainly ask if they were short of personnel, we would do it. I just wouldn't do it routinely.
Okay, so since we did have this presentation from you during the last board meeting about consolidation, and you showed various staffing models in essentially a merged operation with a certain number of firefighters, paramedics, and so forth on staff.
Correct.
How would you manage this staffing model in a fully consolidated or merged department? Are you thinking that all of our paramedics who want to be firefighters would be firefighter paramedics? Are you assuming that everyone we hire in the future when we have turnover would only be a firefighter paramedic? Are you thinking?
Yeah, and those are great questions. You're asking for my opinion. That would have to be, discussed during strategic planning. I would like to have more firefighter paramedics. Those are the most useful employee in my mind. I can use them for anything, but that's my opinion only. That would have to be discussed and decided by the directors during the strategic plan process.
Okay, well, that's good. My question though related to, if you have this, originally you indicated that you wanted to have one critical care paramedic and an EMT on the ambulance, and that you were familiar with that service model being the predominant one in the industry.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah.
Okay, and then we as a board had discussed that when we had turnover in our ranks, because we were overpopulated with paramedics, that we would be hiring exclusively EMTs, and then we walked away from that a bit. So what direction are we headed right now in your mind?
The 4-1 model, so 4 paramedics and an EMT as full-time staff, and then part-time staff, predominantly EMTs.
Okay, so help us understand how the 4 and 1 staffs 3 ambulances.
Well, that would be the situation where one of your paramedics is on vacation or out sick, or we have a high-level transfer to Eugene where we need 2 paramedics in the back.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I'm personally, right now, we are still Western Lane Ambulance District, and we are staffing our ambulances with our crew. And I think we're only using the firefighter side if we have major events and we don't have enough people on shift to fill in, which we're grateful we have that ability. But I am okay with our current staffing model. And I believe that is the chief's responsibility to staff the ambulances with the best available people we have. As far as we had talked about changing the staffing model if we had to cut our budget last year, which we really didn't have to do. So I just guessed we were going to run status quo right now. And I'm in favor, if we have to hire a paramedic or an EMT, when we start the application process, that the chief, Matt, and the committee, whoever that might be, hire the best person available, no matter what their level is as a paramedic or an EMT. That is their decision. That is not mine as a board member. It's an operational decision. Thank you.
And John, we are right in the middle of a hiring process for Western Lane. We're replacing a paramedic. We advertise it as an EMT, although we're accepting applications from paramedics as well for possibly for our part-time pool.
My input, I guess, would be that we get the highest quality service that we can get with the resources that have been provided by the taxpayers. And, you know, I guess, Chief, if you were to tell me that a 3 and 2 model worked the same as a 4, and, you know, we got the same quality as a 4 and 1 as a 3 and 2, I wouldn't have a problem with going 3 and 2. But I think what you're recommending is that you see it as a higher quality of service having the 4 and 1 model. And as we can fit that in our budget, I would support that option.
Any other comments? I think we can, I don't think we need a motion. We'll just take that as consensus then. We'll be shooting for a 4-1 model of just Western Lane full-time employees, four paramedics to 1 EMT per shift. Okay. Moving on to our next item, it is the approval of a pumper tender contract. This is for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue directors. We'd like approval of, or a motion to award the contract to True North Spartan. This is through a state, actually it's a national contract called Sourcewell, so we don't have to get multiple bids. We can go to whoever we want through Sourcewell. And the apparatus committee selected True North, the Spartan. It's a pumper tender model. So we'd like a motion to award that contract. And within the motion, we also they have several different payment plans that we can choose from. We can choose to pay upfront and receive a discount. And then it goes all the way down to paying 50% upfront and getting a smaller discount. Any questions from the board or a motion?
Yeah, Chief, Director Spade here. Plan 1 is paying 100%. We've got the money budgeted. Why don't we do that to save $4,000?
We absolutely can. I think Ron Green's in favor.
I'd make a motion that we choose the vendor as proposed and take the payment option of 100% payment up front to exercise the full discount available to the district.
Chief, are there any downsides to that?
You're giving them money for 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I trust Spartan. I trust True North. I've worked with them before, so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
Director Polisi.
Yeah, hi, Chief. Just a quick question. Is this an all-wheel drive vehicle and does it have foam pumping capabilities?
No to the first question, Director Polisi, and yes to the second question.
Great.
Chief,
This
do we
is
have a motion on the
tender,
table?
so I'm sorry, say again.
Do we have a
Yeah.
motion on the table?
We
We're in
should.
we're in discussion right now.
We never got a second to it, I think.
No, we didn't.
I'm sorry, we're looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, now we're in discussion. Yeah, it's too heavy to have all-wheel drive, but it
Okay.
would act like it.
Great.
Any further discussion? So the motion is to award the contract to True North for a Spartan pumper tender with payment plan number 1, 100% upfront to take advantage of the larger discount. Holly, can you do a roll call vote?
Is there a second?
Yes, Sam
Okay.
Spade second it, Ron.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Right. Director Polisi,
Yes.
Director Burns,
Yes,
Director Hickson,
Yes.
Director Spade,
Yes.
Director Green.
Yes.
Well, thank
Can I-
you.
Can I ask one question, Chief?
Oh, absolutely.
Where does this pumper get deployed and does it replace a pumper we have?
It's going to replace tender 608, which is, I think that's a 92 or a 93 pumper. So that was the oldest one that's on our surplus list.
Can I add to that, Chief?
That would be more of this would be more of our front line. Although I think it would be, I don't know, I'll leave that to Matt. Have you decided where this is going?
Yeah, so we'll be stationed at Station 8, and that's why we actually went to bid for this, because of the dimensions of the station. We had to have it under 33 feet and a half inch, I think, and Tony can correct me down the line, but there was definitely certain dimensions that we have. That's why we couldn't get a demo. That's why we had to go out for bid and make sure a kind of a special build. So the goal of this is actually replacing 2 apparatus, the reserve engine and also the tender at Station 8. So it would be kind of a bifunctional pumper tender out at that station that it can house 5 people in response, but also carry roughly 2,000 gallons of water, because we all know south of town is non-hydrogen.
Smart.
5 people.
Chief Schick,
Yes.
for
Director
the
Burns.
people that are, thank you, for the people that are listening and some may or may not know, could you tell people where Station 8 is?
Clear Lake,
Thank you.
just a little bit past Hilltop if you're going northbound.
Well, I'm just thinking there's some people may not know Clear Lake to Sutton Lake.
Or North Fork, absolutely. Yeah,
Thank you, Matt.
you're welcome, sir.
Sir.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge the apparatus committee led by Chief House and our fire marshal, Tony Miller, and there's a large group of people involved in that. And they did a lot of hard work.
What's the timeline on delivery of the vehicle?
We're looking 12 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, that's where it goes to where, we had, with the size, then we can't get, one of their non-custom models.
Yeah.
Okay, the next agenda item is,
Hello.
I'm sorry, Director Polisi, go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, just a quick question in to Matt. Hey, because it's not all-wheel drive, can somebody look into the cost about adding on-spot chains to that vehicle? I know they do them, and a lot of fire apparatus manufacturers are recommending that.
No,
So-
that's that's what we will do and it's a great suggestion, but we're also looking at this wouldn't be deployed in heavy wildland events. It'd be more only dealing with our district. And if we did have something even like with Sweet Creek, we would use our other tenders to mitigate that disaster or situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. Okay, now we're going on to the next agenda item, and that's to approve a non-binding memorandum of understanding with Oregon Department of Transportation concerning the transfer of the Herman Peak Communications Site. And a little background, this is for Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue Directors. Up at Herman Peak, we have a radio tower and we have several buildings that house transmitters, an emergency generator, there's propane tanks up there. And that site is owned by, the infrastructure there is owned by Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue. They purchased it for $40,000, and this was 25 years ago or 20 years ago. At that time, when they purchased it, they received a grant to put a new tower and to replace some of the buildings. But their original outlay was just $40,000. And then over the years, Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue has been responsible for maintenance of the facility. And when we had a previous firefighter, Marvin Tipler here, who was a radio expert, and he knew how to take care of that building. We're finding now that we have no expertise in-house, but we're still responsible for maintenance. Last year, we had to replace all the storage batteries up there. So we started talking with Lane County, their radio group. We started talking with Oregon Department of Transportation about would they like to take over responsibility for the site. And we understand that the site does have some value, so we've been talking to them about that. Oregon or ODOT has hundreds of these sites around the state. It turns out they have right of first refusal for this site. So if we do transfer this site or sell this site to another agency, they would have the first rights. So they wanted us to sign an MOU. It's non-binding. It just says that we would like to start discussing with them the transfer. They have suggested that they would cover the repeater replacements, and that was a $200,000 capital budget item for SVFR and another $200,000 for Western Lane Ambulance District. They would give us free use of the site for 10 years. They would maintain all the equipment for 10 years. They've also proposed adding repeaters to Glenada, the tower site, which we don't have right now. That would give us much better service upriver, and actually up to the north. As the closer you get to Herman Peak, we have a little problems with radio communication. So they're estimating that they're willing to give us about $500,000 worth of equipment and service for us transferring ownership of the site. We would still, all the agencies that are there, Florence Police, the tribe, State Patrol, there's a ham group up there, would still be maintained. There wouldn't be any change to service. So I see this as quite beneficial to both districts. And I think it gets us out of the maintenance business, which is what our goal was. And for a $40,000 investment, I think that's a pretty good return on our money. So again, looking for a motion to approve the MOU and grant authority to Chief Schick to sign the MOU.
I'll make a motion to approve that MOU.
Motion by Ned. Is there a second?
Spade will second.
Please.
Sam Spade made second. Any discussion? Holly, can you do a roll call vote?
Director Policey,
Yes.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Hickson,
Yes.
Director Spade,
Yes.
Director Green.
Yes. Thank you. So the next agenda item, we don't have an agenda bill. It was just, I think we sent out emails. We've sent out emails over the last couple of months. The city was asking if we wanted to have a representative on the Florence Urban Renewal Agency. Some of you know John Scott. He was representing our interest as a fire
Chief?
district. Yes.
Chief, I'm sorry, can I, just as a point of order, I thought that was under Western Lane Fire and EMS,
What was that?
the ODOT proposal.
Nope.
Well, that's what it says on the, I think, if I'm reading the right thing.
No, it shouldn't.
Okay, I was just confused.
No, it's just SVFR. SVFR owns the site.
Okay. Thanks.
So we're looking to see, and I asked this 2 years ago as well, if any of directors, we're looking for somebody from the fire district who would like to be on the Florence Urban Renewal Agency as our representative. We do have a director from Western Lane on the committee, or the group, Director Webb. So I think he would let us know if anything was going on. But and we'll ask our new directors coming on when they come on if they want to be represented. But is there any SVFR director that would like to be with that group? Hearing none.
Been there, done that.
And I think congratulations to Mike. I think he's the chair of the FERA now, right?
He is. No?
No? Okay.
Okay, I thought I read that.
No, I was just budget committee chair, the draftee for the one time, and I hope they don't try to draft me for chair of the thing. I think, Alan, you should get back on it. You'd have a lot of fun.
So is that spot is still open, right, Mike, for fire?
Yeah, they haven't filled it yet. They would give preference to somebody from the special district because it's not being represented now.
Yeah, it's not guaranteed, but yeah, but it would be preference.
There's nothing that says it couldn't be an employee, chief. Chief.
I'm sorry, you froze on me, John.
Good job for Matt.
Well, yeah, there we go. So
Chief?
then, yes.
I'll do it.
Oh, Director Burns.
Well, serious. All right.
Thank you,
Good job,
Michael.
Alan. Good job, Alan.
You're awesome. So we also need a possible, there's an enterprise zone meeting coming up, and we wanted to know if there's any directors that would be interested in attending that. I can't give you a lot of information on that. Maybe, Dina, do you know more about that, or? I think she's shaking her head.
Yeah, the last I remember, I think it's just, it's a formality that the city's putting together that they just want attendance from the special districts boards to be present at that meeting.
Unless there's a director or with the director, I was planning on attending that, but if any director needs that contact info again, just let me know.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the use of the district logos during political campaigns. And this is, I got a little educated on this. So we had some campaign signs that were for Western Lane Ambulance District directors that had a position that had the logo, the Western Lane Ambulance District logo on those. And looking into that, the state does allow that as long as it's open for the use by anybody that is running. I mean, our directors are running unopposed, so they didn't have to, we didn't have to let other people know they could use it. But it's allowed unless it's prohibited by the districts. And in most states that I've been in, it's prohibited by state law, but here in Oregon, it's a bit different. So we wanted to bring that up for discussion by the boards, and this is for both districts. Actually, all three districts would have to vote on this. But we're recommending that the districts prohibit the use of the department logo on campaign materials just in general. You know, an option was you could leave it up to me, but I'd rather just prohibit the use of the logos. Again, there was nothing illegal done previously. It's just we don't have it in our policy. Our policy covers logo on vehicles and on clothing. It doesn't say anything about signs. So we'd like
Chief,
to.
for clarification, the whole intent is to avoid any perception of endorsement.
Correct.
Right.
So I'd be all in favor of
Awkwardness.
getting rid of that.
I'll make a motion that we approve it on behalf of Western Lane Ambulance District Option 2, which is to prohibit the use of department logos on campaign materials.
I'd second that.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like some discussion. I think, was this the union that purchased and produced these signs?
They
I
did.
believe so.
Okay, and did the candidates know that they were doing this on their behalf?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think this is an appropriate policy because as Director Webb indicated, this kind of presumes a level of endorsement. And, you know, if you notice most of the other districts that had elections, the school board and so on and so forth, you never see any of those institutions' logos used in that fashion.
I saw a lot of Vikings, but
Yeah. Okay, any further discussion?
I would just add too, that you also run the risk or take the chance of having someone who's running who could potentially put things in a bad light, but by utilizing the logo of a specific, agency, again, sort of makes it seem as if we're underscoring whatever it is they might be happening to say.
That's true.
Yeah, in this case, it was the intention was just to get positive PR for the district in general. It was not really for trying to sway voters, but
Yeah.
The logo usage, I do believe is something that we shouldn't be doing. So.
Any more discussion? So Holly, can you do a roll call vote for Western Lane Ambulance District?
Director Yesney,
Yes.
Director Farnsworth,
Yes.
Director Webb,
Yep.
Director Murphy.
Yes.
Okay. Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue Director, same question.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we had a second or motion by Alan Burns. Second by, did Sam
Ron.
did you get in? Oh, Ned got in there? Okay.
No, that was Ron Green.
Okay, Ron got in there. Okay, any discussion? Okay, Holly, could you do Siuslaw Valley Fire and Rescue Director roll call?
Director Polisi,
Yes.
Director Burns,
Yes.
Director Hickson,
Yes.
Director Spade,
Yes.
Director Green.
Yes.
So WLFEA Director, same question.
I don't think we have to vote, Chief. We have no elected positions.
But you do have a logo.
We
Yeah,
have no elected positions that are going to be campaigned for.
but could they put it on a sign? A campaign sign anyway?
What are you campaigning for?
Pour it off.
Just the devil's advocate. I mean,
I would feel comfortable if we could
Merger.
prohibit it for all agencies.
You never know what's going to change in the future. And then if we don't have it on the policy already, then will have to make one then.
Yeah.
You might as well just do it now.
Well, I mean, with Siuslaw Valley Fire, Western Lane Fire and EMS Authority already adopted Siuslaw Valley Fire policy, so it falls underneath that anyways, correct?
correct.
Find
No, I
that.
just said that that would be a loophole. Okay, so the WLFEA directors feel no reason to vote on this. Is that correct?
So let me just ask this really quick, and I hate to bring this up, but in the event of a merger at some point, would the election process change? Would any of that, is there a chance that that could change, that we would be electing?
Well, I will put this into our policy, our Lexipol policies. So I think that would pertain to, well, so it would be in our policies. So I think Chief House is correct.
Okay.
The other directors approved the policy, so it would apply to WLFEA. So the end result is the same.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the end of new business. Excuse me, director comments. Director Murphy.
I have one. I'm not 100% sure I'll be here next month at the meeting, but I wanted to thank Larry in case I'm not here for his time on Western Lane Ambulance, and always willing to ask the hard question, Larry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Farnsworth, you had your hand up?
Yes, I want to congratulate Adam Holbrook and Mike Webb and Vanessa Buss. I think they're all on this call. I think it's great anytime anyone steps up and provides the kind of civil service and volunteer service that each of us here are doing. So we may see things differently, but we're all citizens of goodwill, and I wish you the best in your service. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Well said. Director Polisi.
Yeah, I just want to thank all of the directors that are leaving. You guys have been great, all of you. It doesn't matter, just like Larry said. We may disagree, but we're all in this together, and I wish you all the best. And congratulations to the new people coming on board.
Okay.
You know, Larry, your comment made me giggle. When I was growing up, my granddad was quite the staunch Democrat and I was quite the staunch Republican. And at election time, granddad would look at me and say, John, you're lucky this is America. You have the right to be wrong.
Okay, other director comments or jokes?
I just think
have a
John
quick
should also
one.
thank Rick Yesney because Rick is also, don't forget to thank Rick Yesney, Mr. Murphy.
Rick who? Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I do have a comment too, I mean, this is redundant really, but again, on behalf of all the board, to Ollie for Western Lane Ambulance District Paramedic of the Year. We didn't really all get to, it's hard on Zoom to show our enthusiasm, but on behalf of all of us, we'd like to thank you, Ollie, for all your work and congratulate you on being the Paramedic of the Year. Fantastic.
Absolutely. Any other director comments?
So from giving all these little speeches, that we are still going to be at the next meeting, correct?
Everybody else
Yeah,
is.
we're not gone yet.
Okay, I was like, sounds like everybody's saying goodbye. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something.
What about you? What about you, Ned? We're waiting for the big reveal.
The big reveal?
Yeah.
Oh, like what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm doing is why I was late today. I was delivering mail.
Awesome.
Way to go, Ned.
I want you to be my mail delivery person.
And I'm glad I get mine in town.
Amen.
So a quick thing, yes, the director's terms are good through June 30. The new directors will be sworn in at the July board meeting. And any of you outgoing directors, if you're not using your iPads, if you could turn them in to us, because we will start getting ready to prepare them for the new board.
Right.
But you can keep them until June 30th. So don't feel like you
Absolutely.
have to. Okay, director comments. Our next board meeting is June 24th at 6 p.m. We're still planning on a Zoom meeting, but Director Burns, we're getting close to in person. I can feel it. It's coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, everybody, enjoy your evening.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Chief. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Go Blazers.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.